Welcome back to my channel. I'm doing another species spotlight, and I will be covering Streptocephalus mackini, commonly known as the Chihuahuan desert fairy shrimp. I tried taking different shots of these fairy shrimps so that we can get a better view of them and also just admire all the different characteristics that they have. And in the background, I will just be talking about them. So let's get this video started. A little bit of background on this fairy shrimp when it comes to naming and taxonomy. This species was actually described by John Percy Moore in 1966. Streptocephalus, which is the genus meaning twisted head, is referring to the male's coiled antenna. And mackini, which is the species epithet, is in honors of Dr. Mackin, who is an aquatic biology researcher. This genus, Streptocephalus, also known as the ramhorn's fairy shrimp, is a very large genus containing many different species and is probably the most common genus all around the world. When it comes to appearance of Streptocephalus mackini, they typically measure around an inch in size. These soft-body organisms are often translucent, however, they can have different hues depending on environmental conditions. So I've seen them be green or have blue hues, and even red when they're in much saltier or hotter conditions. Like all fairy shrimp, they have 11 pairs of phallopodia, which are the leaf-like structures that they use for respiration, locomotion, and they will filter feed organisms for conception. Another characteristic that is pretty common amongst fairy shrimp is sexual dimorphism. So males have a second antenna, and the females have an external egg pouch, and you can visually tell them apart. Another feature that I've noticed on the species, or at least all the populations that I've seen, is that their sarcopods tend to be red or orange in coloration. Another feature that you might find interesting is even though their bodies are translucent, depending on the lighting, they can actually have some iridescence. When it comes to the habitat and distribution of Streptocephalus mackini, they can be found in the southwestern deserts of North America. So parts of Mexico and here in the United States, they can be found in Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. They inhabit vernal pools or temporary bodies of water, which include playas in the desert, or they can even be found in rock outcrop pools. I would say that this species is opportunistic and is not too picky, so you can actually find them in roadside ditches or even stock tanks. Just to recap on the fairy shrimp and its habitat, they live in ephemeral bodies of water, meaning that they hold water for a short period of time throughout the year. And these habitats lack predatory fish since fairy shrimps don't have any defenses against them. Fairy shrimps can produce this cyst-like egg that remains dormant in the soil until the rainy season comes. And when conditions are just right, these eggs will hatch and grow rapidly until they reach maturity to continue the cycle. I want to say that the eggs of Streptocephalus species all look very similar, however, there are a few exceptions out there. For Streptocephalus mackini, the egg is spherical in shape and it has many different faces with indentations and ridges. I'll go ahead and show you a picture of this egg since I don't think my description gives it enough justice. Streptocephalus mackini is considered a warm water species, and this is because it occurs during the warmer seasons of the year. If you were to culture them, you need temperatures at least 68 degrees Fahrenheit or above. Since this species originates from the desert or arid regions of North America, you can expect its growth rate to be quite rapid. They can take anywhere from around a week to 2 weeks to reach full maturity, and they kind of need to do this since their pools don't last very long in the desert. So in the wild, their habitats don't last very long because it's the desert, and their lifespans are usually tied to the duration of the pool. However, in captivity, I've noticed these fairy shrimps can live quite longer than what you would see in the wild, up to 2 to 3 months in my experience. As I mentioned, fairy shrimps are filter feeders. This specific species tends to swim in the water column and filter feed organisms using its phallopodia. And these microorganisms can consist of algae, protozoa, or bacteria. From what I understood, fairy shrimps are not really picky what they eat, they just kind of eat what is in the surrounding area. When it comes to their swimming pattern and social behavior, Streptocephalus all seem to have very similar behavior, and this is one of them, where individuals tend to congregate with one another, and it's kind of like a swarm. More or less, they'll swim in a stationary pattern as well. Once these fairy shrimps reach maturity, the males will actually start to pursue females and begin the mating process. The mating is really rapid in the species. Males will pursue a female, align his body with hers, and launch himself using his second antennas to clasp onto the female and then mate with her. In my experience, the species is not as aggressive when it comes to the males pursuing the females, so it's pretty infrequent when they mate. And when they do mate, it is very quick that you won't even notice it. Because this is a desert species, the females can actually produce a ton of eggs. And the reason behind that is if the habitats are so unstable, you would want to produce more offspring to ensure that you have generations to come. So the females of Streptocephalus mackini can produce hundreds of eggs. And within the egg pouch, there is probably 100 or more eggs that she contains. And she will release these every few days. In terms of the ecosystem, what are these fairy shrimp good for? They are food for a ton of organisms, which includes aquatic insects and definitely birds. As these habitats fill with rainwater, they are a reservoir for many different organisms. So birds or mammals will come to either feed on the shrimp or drink water. But in this way, they can actually pick up eggs and release them in a different location. So it actually helps the dispersal of these fairy shrimp. Especially waterfowl, they'll tend to land in these locations, either pick up eggs on their feet or digest eggs, and they can actually go through the digestive system without being destroyed, and then release them in a similar location, such as a stock tank. And that is one way that fairy shrimps can show up in stock tanks. In regards to threats and conservation of this fairy shrimp, it seems to be pretty secure from the research I did online. It is pretty prevalent in a lot of places. Now, when it comes to identifying this species, scientists actually use the male fairy shrimps and the structure called the second antenna to identify and describe species. This second antenna is comprised of many different structures, but the most notable ones are the hand, which has a thumb and a finger. These structures can have different nooks and crannies and spines in which scientists are able to identify them. I have some resources, and just by looking at the features, I'm able to identify them. However, describing it to y'all seems very challenging, so I think if I just show you a picture, it will do it enough justice and hopefully give you a reference to use if you're ever in the field and you're trying to identify whether you have this species. Concludes my video on Streptocephalus mackini, the Chihuahuan desert fairy shrimp. If you really like this content and you want to see more, please give this video a thumbs up, share my content, and comment below. I really appreciate the feedback and engagement. If you've been keeping up with me, I am redoing some of the species spotlight so I can add more information and just create better content in general. So stay tuned for more videos.